This entitled mother is about to pull this lady's prosthetic arm off, all because she didn't get her way. What crazy demand does this entitled mum make, and will there be justice for this disabled lady? Happy birthday if today's your birthday, and on with the revamped show. So this story takes place somewhere in the late 90s, early noughties. The backstory: my mum was in an accident when she was 14 and lost her right arm. She has about 1/4 of that arm left, and she calls it her stub. And to be honest, the loss hasn't done much to derail her. She drives. She has a joystick-esque thing which sticks out of the wheel, and she turns it like she's steering a ship. She calls it her knob, loudly and in public. She worked for a long time until she started having issues with the arm she does have, and she's generally been the person in the family to host and prepare all events and do all the labor. Honestly, she's my hero. But you're here for the story, so here goes. Mum and I go to the supermarket at the busy hours on a weekend because we couldn't make our usual after-school weekend trip when things were less crazy. We go around the whole parking lot twice, as do a row of cars behind us, and we finally managed to nab a disabled spot right by the entrance because someone was leaving us as we approached. Now, my mother rarely uses the disabled parking, even though she's permitted, because she always says people who can't walk, etc. need it more. But again, she is permitted, and there weren't any other spaces. After we park and get out, we hear a car honk a few times, followed by, "Excuse me," as a woman runs up from behind, catching us just before the entrance to the store. This woman literally left her car running in the middle of a busy parking lot, causing a massive pileup. So Karen, that's her name now, catches our attention with her shouting, and when we turn around, we're greeted with a "Can I speak to the manager haircut?" 90s edition. And about half a dozen kids, ranging from goth tween to a toddler in her arms. Karen then goes on to explain how the spot my mum just parked in is for disabled people, in an accusatory tone. My mum was wearing her prosthetic arm underneath her long-sleeved denim coat, overly big so the fingertips of her prosthetic were barely visible. So it was an honest mistake, even though it was a little odd the way she abandoned her car and ran up to us with her entire litter. Still, my mum smiles and proclaims, "Don't worry, I'm allowed to park there," and we turn back around. That answer wasn't good enough for Karen. Suddenly Karen and her kids are in front of us, and she's given the toddler to another of her children just so she can fold her arms out and pout. "As you can see," she gestures towards her kids, "I have a lot going on, and I need that spot more than you do. You only have one child." Now, I must have only been 6 or 7, but even I knew the difference between disabled parking and those spaces reserved for parents with small children. I said something along the lines of, "You need a disabled badge to park there. It doesn't matter how many kids you have," in a 6 to 7-year-old lingo, and this woman took major offense. She goes off on a major rant about how being a mother of all her children was hard, how she was having an awful day, week, month, and how it's not fair that my mum, who looked perfectly fine, had tricked the government into getting a badge that lets her park in a spot that Karen should obviously have instead. As she rambles about this, she looks around, garnering the attention of other shoppers, and is doing that "don't you agree with me" thing that people do to validate themselves, but never gave anyone a chance to respond because she was already on to the next person. My mum grabs my hand and tries to lead me around Karen, ignoring her entirely, but Karen keeps stepping in front of my mum, demanding her spot. She's getting increasingly annoyed and loud. I remember asking my mum several times if I'd done something wrong, because my response seemed to have triggered this rant, but she kept reassuring me that it was fine and that I should just ignore her, which annoyed Karen even more. This goes on for about 5 minutes, a very long 5 minutes, before my mum finally snaps, "I have one arm," silencing Karen mid-sentence. I used to wonder why she didn't just tell Karen the specifics earlier, but as I've grown up I've come to realize that it wasn't anyone else's business, and I can see why my mum wouldn't want to take her jacket off, which is kind of a chore for her, and pop the prosthetic just to prove something. So we begin to walk around Karen again, but barely make it 5 feet before we hear her go, "Bullcrap." What happens next is seared into my brain. Karen storms up to my mother and tries to undress her, the denim jacket, and is just shaking, calling my mother a liar. and my mother goes into full fight to the death mode because physical altercations are obviously more intense or scary for her. She starts scratching, flailing, kicking, and even tries landing a headbutt on Karen. But as she does it, one of Karen's children attempts to jump in and help their mum, which leads me to jumping in to help mine. And suddenly I'm brawling with her kids. This couldn't have lasted longer than 30 seconds. It was enough time for people to stop and gather, but not enough for anyone to react or put a stop to it. I can't imagine what it must have looked like. Two women in their 30s fighting as their children do the same by them. But it all came to a stop when, somehow, Karen manages to yank my mum's denim jacket from her, and off pops the prosthetic with it, crashing to the ground and resulting in a universal gasp that shook the entire parking lot. Okay, exaggeration, but it was definitely a moment. All that's left on my mum's arm at this point is the suction pad and sharp nail-like hook that slots into the prosthetic. It looks like a blade sticking out of her stub, and without missing a beat, my mum raises it to Karen and in a sarcastic tone goes, "Come on then." I wish I was old enough at the time to realize how hilarious that was. A woman from the crowd that gathered around us stormed into our little fight circle and picked my mum's arm up and handed it to her, before going off on Karen, who looks smaller than 7-year-old me at that point. People start shouting to get security, etc. And Karen rallies her spawn and they all run for her car. I still remember for her kids yelling for her not to leave them, because only her oldest could keep up with her running away, as the rest trailed behind. My mum was visibly shaken by the incident, but wanted to save face for me and the crowd that was suddenly hounding us. She insists she's fine, doesn't want the police, doesn't want the fuss, and we go about our shop. When we got to the checkout about 20-30 minutes later, a few of the people that witnessed the whole thing had gathered and insisted they pay for my mum's shop, which she reluctantly accepted. Then they helped us take all the shopping out to the car, and when we got home, my mum tells me she doesn't want me getting into any fights ever again. Then she lets me have way too many donuts. Normally in this situation, if somebody was to stand up to somebody parked in a disabled parking that wasn't supposed to, that would be a pretty brave thing to do. Like if you 100% knew they weren't supposed to park there, and you actually call them out on it, it means you're actually standing up for the disabled people who do have the right to park there. But it's not like she was making an honest mistake and then, "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you're disabled," left her alone. No, the only reason she called her out is because she wanted to park there. Apparently having 6 kids is the same thing as being disabled in her mind. Let's meet her halfway. Let's say that being an entitled parent is at least some form of mental disability. For context, I live in New Zealand, and people here tend to be pretty chill, so when this happened it was like, what? So background. I work a couple of part-time jobs, and one of them is at a kids' playground or theatre. We run live kids shows, Muppet style, and have a custom-built playground outside. Now, important things to note. 1. We charge $15 for tickets to the show, and then with that, kids can play on the playground. 2. If you are not seeing a show, we charge $10 per child to use the playground, remembering this is a custom-built, one-of-a-kind job. 3. Every child that has been paid for gets a brightly coloured wristband so we know that they have been paid for. And 4. I've worked there almost since it opened in 2016, so I know the place very well. On to the story. This was a typical Saturday and I was working the front desk, selling tickets and giving out the wristbands, when my colleague for the day, we'll call him Steve, walks in with the mother, EP, and her 4 children. Steve seemed a bit stressed as he was new and quickly directed the EP to me. The conversation goes as follows. "Hi, how can I help you today?"
"Yes, your staff here was very rude,"
gesturing wildly to Steve.
"And he tried to stop my children playing."
"Are you seeing our show today?" Now I can see her kids don't have wristbands, but I'm asking anyways.
"No, we're just using the playground. Can we go now?"
This lady literally puts her hand on her hips and glares at me as if I'm singularly responsible for all her problems. "I'm sorry, if you're just using the playground, there's a $10 charge per person. I see you have 4 children, so would you like to purchase 4 bands?" EP gasping like a fish.
"What do you mean there's a charge for the playground? It's a playground. There are free ones down the road. Why would we pay?"
At this point, I'm a little stunned. "I'm sorry you feel that way. Our park is one of a kind and some of our pieces took years to build."
Well, I came here when it opened and there wasn't any charge, so you should honor that.
Okay, 2 things. 1, it has never been free here. And 2, even if it was, that doesn't mean you get free after a price is changed. Like, that ain't how business works. Now, I know I said I wasn't there from the very beginning, but she didn't know that. That's strange. I've worked here since we opened and there's always been a charge. Maybe you just forgot you paid.
No, we didn't pay then, so we are not paying now. Do you understand?
Then the EP reaches across my counter and tries to grab a bunch of bands from my stock, which I quickly move out the way. She then proceeds to shout in my face a whole bunch of stuff not worth repeating, but my favorite part was when she tried to act like I didn't speak English. I've been speaking with you for over 5 minutes in a very Kiwi accent, like, what? Anyway, it gets to the point where I'm done. EP has run out of things to say, and now I have a line of parents and kids waiting to purchase wristbands like normal people. In that case, I take it you're not going to be buying any tickets?
No, we're not.
I'm sorry we couldn't be of help, I say cheerily with a big smile, cause soon hopefully she'll be gone. I hope your kids have fun at one of the other parks you were talking about. The EP splutters around for a bit when my manager, who has been listening in from his office, which sits behind my desk, customers can't see it, walks out. EP sees this as an opportunity, and I've never seen anyone get taken down so fast. My manager has terrible customer service skills, so he usually leaves all of that to me, but clearly he had had enough.
Your staff has been…
My manager loudly cuts in.
I'm sorry, my staff has clearly explained everything to you and has been treating you with far more respect than you deserve. You have stated your intention not to purchase anything from us, so now I am asking you not to harass my staff anymore, and that you leave the site immediately.
Then he walked out again. A little annoyed, he just left, but you can't win at everything. EP splutters for a moment, then sees that Steve, who I might add is a big guy, has come back over just in time for the last part and is waiting arms crossed for her to leave. She sends another glare and a few choice words about customer service and her rights, etc., but eventually leaves, thank goodness. Anyways, I was glad she left. The next week I was checking emails and stuff, and see that an anonymous person sent a scathing email meant to be given to management that was about me and my manager's racial, homophobic, and inexcusable behavior. Clearly the EP. But I'm in charge of emails, so delete. Hopefully I'll never hear from her again. I love how entitled parents basically make their own argument against themselves. All the other playgrounds nearby are free, so this one should be free too. Okay, well if you want a free playground, go to those free playgrounds. There, pretty simple solution, huh? And if you don't want to use those ones because they're crap and you want to use this one, well maybe that means it's actually worth paying for. Okay, not directly me, but my friend. This took place a couple of years ago. This was the time when me and my friend and everyone around my neighborhood and school were crazy about computer games and movies. If I were to describe the era in one word, it was the pen drive era. Nostalgic, isn't it? So everyone in schools, neighborhoods is trading movies, games, and music via pen drives, and it's all a lot of fun. We shared games like GTA Vice City, San Andreas, Need for Speed, Counter-Strike. It was all fun. We had this one kid living a house away. He was the rich kid who has no friends and is a social outcast. He always seemed very entitled, and trying to put us down by being too sophisticated. So, anyway, this kid came to know of the games my buddy had stored on his PC by months of bartering stuff. He wanted those games and he asked for them. We didn't really like him, so we said no. It was the start of summer vacations, and he didn't want to get bored, so he tried one more time, offered us some chocolate, and once we ate it up, told us that now we owed it to him to share those games. We straight up denied him. Here's the catch. EK's mum, EM, was a good friend of my buddy's mum. So EM told her, and she ordered my buddy to give him the games. EK comes in with an evil grin on his face, standing right behind us to make sure we give him all the games. Now here's the thing. Any kid who has a strict dad knows how to conceal the stuff down a rabbit hole of folders. Be it adult material, movies, games. Plus, you store different games in different folders to make sure that some games stay unharmed, if someday dads start deleting stuff. The thing about pirated games is that either they are top class, or they have tons of malwares and viruses.
Buddy had kept some of the unsafe games in a separate folder to scare them with antivirus and try to run them. We simply pasted all of these suspicious games in EK's pen drive and let him go home all happy. In 2 days, EK's old antivirusless Lenovo was slowed down, glitching, randomly shutting down. How did we know? He came back fuming angry, asking us about it. So yeah, EK, I hope you had a lonely, boring summer vacation. What a little punk. Imagine being offered some chocolate and then after you've finished the chocolate, they're like, yeah, so now you owe me stuff. That wasn't the deal. I do feel a little bad for the kid, like it sounds like he just wanted some friends. At the same time, it kind of sounds like he did it to himself, thinking that he was better than everyone else. Maybe if he started sharing things like the chocolate without expecting anything out of them, he might actually make some genuine friends. Submit your story to be read on the channel at voiceyherestories@gmail.com and join our Voicey veteran community at r/VoiceyHere. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Alright, Voicey veterans, I'll see you in the next one.